This Monday was one of the absolute best Mondays I've had in a new week of daily races in quite some time that I can remember. Specifically talking there about the quality of the driving standards, as you can see from these few clips here from races earlier in the day, going side by side with really fast drivers through corners that are not easy to go side by side through. Truly fantastic racing, a great pleasure to be a part of it, and I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to the drivers you see in these clips for such incredible racecraft and respect that they've shown on track. I do think it's worth mentioning at this point, this is why it's worth making friends on track. This is why it's worth prioritising clean racing over a finishing position, even to the extent that you help someone else get a podium or a win or concede a position rather than fighting too hard, or bump draft people to help them get better laps in, or waiting for people when you hit them and you've made a mistake so you wait up for them. When you go above and beyond to demonstrate that you care more about clean driving standards than you do about a finishing position, it's ultimately reciprocated. People remember that, and they're more inclined to become your friend on the track and help you and you help them. And this is the ultimate result, is that you get to experience racing like this. So this is something that I think is worth taking on board, even if you are at C rank or B rank. It doesn't matter what rank it is. If you go above and beyond to show people that you want to be their friend and you want to drive clean and you want to drive respectful and you help them on track, it will be reciprocated. You will make friends on track and you will have better races as a result. Okay, so let's move forwards to the feature race of the evening then. So 10 laps at Suzuka, hard and soft tyres. I actually think this hard and soft tyre concept works at this race better than other ones. You have the option to pit basically lap 5 or lap 6, and both strategies can work. So if you go for lap 5, you will end up with a gap, and then you're going to be caught as your tyres die. And it does make for interesting, exciting races. I actually think PD are onto something. Definitely better than last week in my opinion. Better than 12 laps straight without any pit stop and without any tyre wear whatsoever. So starting P3 on the grid with Digit in front of me, Snow in the lead, Old behind. These are the 4 drivers that have got the pace to stay with each other at the front in this race. It was a little bit later in the sort of late afternoon. I think this was about 5 o'clock. I don't know if it got more busy after this, but it had settled down a little bit. There were a few less fast drivers in the race by this point. Car-wise, it looked like a lot of different cars worked. I saw some fast drivers in a variety of different cars, but it seems like maybe the BMW M6 and the Lexus RCF are the 2 go-to meta cars, if you will. I haven't checked the leaderboard at the time of recording this video, but certainly when this race was on, Lexus was in P1, BMW is very close behind. I think the BMW might be the slightly better race car because it is traditionally better on tyres. Usually it used to be one of the top 3 cars on tyres, with the other 2 being the McLaren and the RX Vision. The cars have been increased in weight though with the latest BOP, so I don't know if it still has its tyre advantage. Digit did seem to think it did, and so I respect that. And the Lexus, not quite so good on tyres, but definitely over 1 lap, a very quick car, very quick car. Of the 2 of them, I have recently fallen in love with the Lexus, a car that I avoided driving for so long because when I did try it a long time ago, I didn't get on with it. I don't know exactly why I suddenly decided to try it again recently, but just fell in love with it. The throttle control needed, or the more accurately I would say the way the power is delivered, suits my driving style. I'm not someone who likes to get onto the corner exit and floor it. I prefer to feed the power in, and the Lexus has almost like a usable turbo lag where you have to get the power down and let the turbo spool up before you floor it. So yeah, it really does suit my driving style. I like the handling. It's a high downforce car for Group 3 standards, and I've always gone on with FR cars more than MR cars as well. So yeah, really liking this car. Taking a look here at the driver behind, there's something that happens on the exit there. He did it seems blame Luger behind him. I don't know, I didn't check the replay to see if there was contact, but that took one very fast driver out of the race. Ols, I had many good races with him today, and he's certainly capable of running at this pace no problem. So that then put us down to just 3 drivers instead of 4 drivers that potentially would be fighting for the podium. Custom slip actually seems to work here as well. I don't know if it's because it's a very technical track and you don't really reach super high speeds that much. It does seem like the custom slip just doesn't feel as significant. It lets you keep up without making it feel like a meme race. So as we head down to the chicane here for the end of lap 1, looking at the rear view mirror, driver behind makes a mistake, I get hit, and all of a sudden my race goes from just staying in formation until the end to now we are struggling to keep up with Digit and Snow. Jord behind me there, you see he's flashed his lights and gave me a bump draft, so he's saying, don't worry, I'm not going to attack you. I'm very appreciative of that. This is what I would normally do if I recognised the driver in front was faster than me, particularly at this point in the race. If you try and go past a faster driver, you're just going to end up defending, you're just going to end up wasting a lot of time, and 9 times out of 10, the slower driver is always the one that's going to make a mistake, and the faster driver will always get past anyway. So far better if you do identify yourself as being the slower driver of the two, to tuck in behind the faster driver, bump draft him when you can, use his slipstream, and try to stay with him. Again, these are the little things that I mentioned earlier in the race, earlier in the video, I apologise, where people remember that, and I will remember George's name next time. Absolutely, I will remember that, and I would be inclined to help him wherever possible in the future. I got a really good hairpin here, one of like qualifying standard hairpin, and you can see from the delta there that that actually closed up a couple of tenths almost in one hairpin. But I still need perfect corners for the rest of this lap, perfect corners to have any chance of being with Digit and Snow, except that they both make the exact same mistake at the exact same time. I checked the replay, there was absolutely no contact. At the time I wasn't sure what had happened. There was no contact whatsoever. They both simply ran a little bit wide on that curb on the outside, and if you do that, it pulls you wide, sends you into a spin. They were both honestly quite fortunate to not completely spin out of the race. But fine, I'm not complaining because it put me back in the race, gave me a chance of getting a podium again. So 7/10 gap to Snow. Jumping forwards to the next lap, you can see that I've brought that gap down to 2/10, and then this provides me with the opportunity to go for a move. It looked like Snow initially went to defend it and then changed his mind. I don't know what his thinking was there, if he had a strategy in mind of why to not defend it. He certainly could have defended it, but either way it left the door open for me, and I'm happy to take the lead. Race nerves can still be a residual problem for me. It's something that's improved massively over the years and as I've progressed, but one situation that can still very much make me nervous is leading a race, particularly with very well-known fast drivers behind me, particularly with Digit behind me whilst he's streaming. So by putting myself in the lead, I'm willingly increasing my exposure to that exact situation that makes me nervous. The more you increase your exposure to something that makes you nervous, the more eventually your nervous system learns to handle the situation. Looking in the rear view mirror, you can see here that Digit goes for a move on Snow and puts himself into P2. In doing so, this gave me a 1 second lead, and this is when I started to think about my pit stop strategy, and Digit going for that move made my mind up about which lap to go for. So you've got two choices, either lap 6 and the soft tyres stay in good condition and you can push reasonably hard for the remaining 4 laps, or lap 5, it gives you a huge undercut, so you gain, I think, maybe even 3 seconds extra lead, but you've got to really nurse the tyres. Now, I had done the 5-5 strategy in the Lexus earlier in the day, and let me tell you, I had killed my tyres before the end of the last lap, as in completely red tyres. So it was the risky strategy, but I decided to go for it. because I was pretty sure if Digit had my slipstream for the rest of the race, he would beat me. So, exiting the pits, coming round to end that lap as the others pitted, I could see that something had happened to Digit because he was no longer in P2. And in fact, when I went back and had a look at the stream afterwards, he'd run wide on turn 1. Very easy, very common mistake. I did it twice that evening as well. So there is a little bit of pressure off the fact that Digit's not in P2. But I still got to really, really nurse these tyres. And just to put this in perspective, I'm actually braking on soft tyres in exactly the same place that I brake on hard tyres. And the reason for that is I want to have less apex speed, less energy going through the tyres. This lap ends up being a 1:59.5, I think, and I kid you not, it's half a second off of what I could do if I pushed. I've got to do a better job of this strategy this time. So, heading into the hairpin again, taking a look behind us, you can see that Digit moves from P4 to P3. So, Digit now in third place. He's still, as far as I'm concerned, the primary threat. Moving forwards one lap, you can see that the gap to Snow is about the same. Snow, of course, was on the same strategy as myself, which is why I'm expecting Digit to actually get past Snow anyway. But again, looking at the rear view mirror, Snow has a moment on that curb, I'm assuming, again, and that puts Digit into P2 with a 5-second lead. Now, you might be thinking, 5 seconds, Luke, surely that's going to be enough, right? Even if you did pit one lap earlier. But to that, I'll just quote what Digit himself said on stream. The tyres are good, and then they all of a sudden fall off a cliff. It's not a gradual reduction in the grip, it's a sudden dramatic loss in grip. And what I was trying to do here is drive slow enough to stall that cliff. So really, really holding back to make sure that they didn't fall off the cliff before the end of the race. It's a very counterintuitive situation to be in. You want to drop the hammer and you just can't. As we jump forward there to the final lap, you can see that the gap has now come down to under 2 seconds. It's the front right hand tyre that you've got to look after, so you can push a little bit harder on the right handers and you've got to take it easy on the left handers. Like this corner here, this is one of the 3 corners that burns the front right tyre. Look at the throttle input, just being really, really gentle there. Gap now coming down to 1 second. I know he's not going to catch me until the last sector, so this is just about whether or not he's going to be close enough to go for a move. We've got a couple more right-handers coming up, the 2 right-handers that do the most damage, that being Spoon and 130R. Taking it really, really careful around the hairpin, not getting on the throttle too early, get the car rotated and then get on the throttle. Gap maintains at 1 second. I was quite surprised there. I thought he'd catch me a bit more in that section, but this section he's going to catch up massively, braking really early, much earlier than even the hard tyre braking point now. Really shaving off the apex speed around the corner, not getting the throttle down until the car is mostly rotated. Look at the front right tyre, it's got a few more corners in it at most, and then it's gone, it's done. Actually dabbing the brakes here for 130R, coasting through the corner, letting the downforce do the work. Digit isn't quite close enough to go for a move into the chicane, and if I can get through the chicane and hug the right hand side of the track, I can bring home a 1-2 for Digit Racing. I think it's probably worth saying here, we've only had 2 1-2s, me and Digit, and I've won both of them, so I probably owe Digit a victory at some point in the future. Thank you guys for watching. Get out of here and go race.